Yes. Welcome back to another episode of the HTG podcast, the Hit the Green podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brandon Towers. Pretty crazy to think. I think this is the 8th episode of the podcast. So insane to think that, we've been at it for a couple months now. It's felt like a much shorter time than that, to be honest with you. But we get our first major championship week since we started here at the pod. So super pumped to get into the major championship week this week, talking PGA Championship. But before we go ahead and jump into that, just first want to talk to you guys about Thrive Fantasy. Again, for those of you guys maybe that are new to the podcast, Thrive is a platform that I've been playing on weekly since it was introduced to me. And the benefit to Thrive, it's a prop style daily fantasy game. So you're going to go ahead and choose out of 10 available prop bets for PGA. You're going to go ahead and choose 5 of those prop bets. There's a point total that's associated with both the over and the under for those prop bets. Whichever is more likely to happen will, of course, be associated with a lower point total. And yeah, so you go ahead, you select 5 of those prop bets that you like. And if you score the most points, then you go ahead and take down the prize pool. So it is an awesome platform, particularly for those folks that aren't really taking daily fantasy sports in a professional sense, but are more so your casual players that are just looking to play a few dollars here and there and have a good experience. So Thrive is great for that. It greatly reduces the amount of research you're going to have to do week in, week out. The prop bets are for players that you'll get to see on the national broadcast. So you'll actually get to follow your bets and enjoy sweating your bets that way, which is a lot of the fun and most of the fun really in what we do here anyway in playing daily fantasy sports and looking at the betting markets. So at Thrive Fantasy, absolutely worth taking a look. And if you do want to go ahead and give them a shot, first and foremost, you can either download them, the Thrive Fantasy app, on the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store, or you can play via their website, www.thrivefantasy.com. And if you go ahead and sign up today, use the promo code HTGPOD. Again, that's HTGPOD is the promo code. And you'll get a $20 match on your first deposit of $20 or more. So highly recommend you check out those folks at Thrive. It is an awesome game, and I continue to play it. So I definitely recommend you guys check it out as well. And with the Thrive Fantasy plug behind us, we can get into the plug on this. So yeah, let's talk about the joint I'm smoking. Today I'm smoking Cherry Kush. The grower's Pacific Reserve. They're a pretty common grower you'll see here in Southern California, in Northern California as well. I'm used to seeing them. So a bigger name this week as far as the grow op goes. Pacific Reserve, a pretty large one. But this Cherry Kush was a great selection based on the strains that it is comprised of. So it is a hybrid, but it smokes really as a pure indica. And that is because it is a cross between 2 very, very popular pure indica strains, Purple Afghani, and it's a variation of Afghan Kush, which is a very popular strain, and OG Kush, which is probably the most popular marijuana strain dating back to, the 70s, 60s, 1970s, 1960s. OG Kush has always been a staple of the marijuana industry. So a Purple Afghani OG Kush cross. Really excited to get into this. It's testing at 29.45% THC. So we're getting really lifted for the PGA Championship this week, but really excited to do so. I'm going to follow my joint trick again. If you guys haven't done this, I'm telling you, do it. It makes it so much easier to spark this joint up and have it burning nice and evenly rather than canoeing. So just go ahead and make that little lip. I'm going to burn it off. Go ahead and just pull that right off. And we are off. Okay, so before we go ahead and get into the PGA Championship, per usual, let's go ahead and recap last week's tournament. So the WGC FEDEX St. Jude, JT put another win under his belt on the PGA Tour. He won the tournament at minus 13. Just played absolutely phenomenally tee to green. And around the green as well. JT was pretty solid this week, which around the green ended up mattering a bit this week. But really, we did identify the correct skill set in what would play well around TPC Southwind. We just needed ball strikers, and not necessarily guys that are going to move the ball out there, very far. We didn't need necessarily the Brysons of the world who are out there bombing it off the tee, but we needed guys really in that Brendan Todd mold outside of the final round who are just consistent ball strikers, round to round. And maybe they don't move it too far off the tee, but they're going to find fairways. They're going to find a way to gain strokes off the tee. They're going to find a way to gain strokes tee to green. Those are the players that seemingly perform well around TPC Southwind. And the model came through for us last week. So it was interesting to see Bryson try to bomb and gouge this golf course. And something to note for later years, it didn't really work for him. It didn't pan out. So this isn't really a golf course that you can just attack with your length off the tee. You can't solely attack it with your length off the tee, I should say. You're going to need to be able to strike the ball solidly from tee to green, round in and round out. And Bryson's approach numbers have been, honestly, they've been terrible lately, especially for his standards. So we did identify the correct skill set. With that being said, the player pool for the $500,000 to first tournament on DraftKings was awesome. We did something new at the HTG pod last week and went ahead and released a favorite 8 article. And that article, I'm going to go ahead and release something similar later today for you guys. But that article is really just a way for me to put down all of my favorite DraftKings GPP plays, so the large tournament plays, based on their ownership and price, and just put that in one place for you guys. Also gives me an opportunity to do a bit of a deeper dive for you. These are all things that I look at. If you looked at the favorite 8 article last week, you'll notice I included some screenshots, a little more of a deep dive into the information that I'm looking at every single week to go ahead and pick these plays. But for my top, maybe 8, maybe I expanded a little bit this week, given that it's a major championship week. But for my top, maybe 8 to 12 plays, I want to give you guys a little more insight into a little deeper dive into specifically what I'm looking at, getting down into the nitty gritty with their round-to-round data and things of that nature. So the favorite 8 was hopefully helpful for you guys. I know I enjoyed writing it and rereading it after the tournament ended. I was pretty happy with what we identified. The big misses, of course, were Paul Casey, who I am just fucking over. I don't know what's going on with that guy. And then Victor Hovland, who had an uncharacteristically bad week striking the ball. But outside of those two, the favorite 8, the other 6 members performed very adequately. And our favorite play of the week in the favorite 8, Shane Lowry, a SCHWAG bag player at that, really came through for us with a T6. And you know what? It really could have been better. So Lowry gained 7.3 strokes tee to green across the tournament at the WGC FedEx, and he gained 0 strokes putting. So yeah, if we could have gotten a big week from Lowry on the greens, he was live to win that event, and that was something that I'd mentioned. It's why I loved Lowry so much last week. He had such immense upside at such a low price tag and low ownership. And the guys that were owned around him, and Todd had a good week, but the guys that were owned around him just aren't the same class player as Shane Lowry is. Top 25 player in the world. He won the last major championship we saw at the 2019 Open Championship. So yeah, Shane Lowry really came through for us. We had him in the betting market to win and to top 5. So a little disappointed that the T6 came in. Just missed that top 5 by a spot. But yeah, as far as DraftKings goes, Shane absolutely did his job at the WGC FedEx St. Jude. And there's actually a player somewhat similar to Shane that we like in the SCHWAG bag this week that's coming in at minuscule ownership. The only difference this week is going to be this player doesn't quite have the upside that Shane Lowry had. So good on Shane Lowry to come through for us last week. Can fuck off Paul Casey for sure. That guy is just, man, unbelievable. And Hovland was just an interesting case. I don't know. I might have to cut Victor some slack. He's been so great tee to green since he came back, since the tour came back, I should say, since the tour restart, that we might have to give Victor a break on on his performance last week. Okay, so that pretty much recaps, the WGC FedEx St. Jude. I guess I also want to mention Brooks, who was a part of our favorite 8 based on narrative, not based on statistics. Had a good performance, really kind of fell apart. Wheels kind of came off there down the stretch. Had a chance to get up and down on 16, the par 5, and just couldn't get the ball to check for him. If he gets that up and down and makes birdie there, then it's a different golf tournament. We very well may have been going to a playoff between Brooks and JT. So Brooks kind of let the wheels come off at the end, as did Brendan Todd for all of Sunday. But JT certainly earned that victory. He was nothing but solid all week long, and particularly on Sunday. So let's go ahead and get this resparked, and we can get into the PGA Championship breakdown. Okay, so PGA Championship, 2020 PGA Championship. We're going to be playing at TPC Harding Park this year. That's in San Francisco, California. Course plays at a par 70, 7,248 yards. The greens are bent grass. Adjusted for par, 7,248 yards. It's a pretty long golf course, very similar to what we saw last week at TPC Southwind as far as distance goes. But the difference here is we're going to be pretty coastal right there in San Francisco. The winds are going to be up. This course might play even longer. It might play even shorter. It'll depend on the wind directions. This might change day to day. And on that note, to mention weather, no rain in the forecast, but it's going to be windy. It's going to be windy around TPC Harding Park. So AM, PM, tee time stacking, especially in showdown, is still something you can definitely look to. Maybe the wind dies down for one of these waves in the AM or the PM, and the other wave sees much more difficult wind conditions. So for showdown, something you can certainly consider. For full tournament stacking, sure, if you're someone that likes to full tournament tee time stack, it's something that I think you can do here based on the wind and the unpredictability of the wind. So TPC Harding Park, it's a municipal course. It's a muni. It's built back in 1925. So one of the older muni golf courses that exists there, as a matter of fact, in Northern California. It was a course that really, really hit a lull. It went to a very, very bad place in the late 90s and even really right around the turn of the century, where, it was even used as a parking lot for the US Open that was hosted at Olympic Club. So it's literally made its way from a parking lot a couple decades ago to being redesigned and rehabilitated through a push by a gentleman by the name of Sandy Tatum, former USGA president Sandy Tatum, who grew up, playing the golf course, grew up around the Bay Area, understood just how great of a layout it was and what it could be if rehabilitated. So yeah, that funding was received in 2001, and the golf course really hasn't looked back since. As early as 2005, it hosted a WGC event that was won by Tiger Woods. It's also hosted a President's Cup in 2009, I believe, as well as the 2015 WGC Match Play. That was the Cadillac Match Play back in 2015, which was won by Rory McIlroy. And I actually went back and watched that final match between McIlroy and Gary Woodland, just to get I watched the entire broadcast to get a feel for what the golf course was looking like back in 2015 and what we might be able to expect this week. And I did learn I had a couple of key takeaways, I would say, very key takeaways. The first thing that I noticed was that these fairways are pretty difficult to hit. Lots of dog legging, whether it's major dog legs or just minor dog legs. There are lots of them. Finding the correct distance and angle off the tee to find the fairway seems to be a bit difficult. So finding these fairways this week, I suspect, is going to be a challenge. And I don't know if you've been on social media, any of my viewers, but if you've seen what the rough looks like around TPC Harding Park right now, you're going to need to be in the fairway because it is as penal as it gets. It's almost going to be a lost shot every time, unless you're one of these players that's great around the green and it's scrambling. But you are going to put yourself at a serious disadvantage this week if you can't find the fairway. And from what I saw in that 2015 match play final, it's going to be pretty tough to find the fairway. And we were talking about, in-form Rory McIlroy and in-form Gary Woodland, two very good drivers of the golf ball that were in that match. And yeah, they were struggling to find fairways. So that was the first thing I noticed. And with the rough being up, we'll definitely want guys that can find the fairway this week and gain strokes off the tee, and particularly gain strokes off the tee by finding the fairway and having that driving accuracy. The second thing I noticed that was a big takeaway was these green complexes are huge. For the most part, these things are huge. You can hit the green and find yourself with, a 75, 85 footer pretty easily. So the other thing I definitely want to focus on this week is three-putt avoidance. I want guys that can get it up and down when they have an 80-foot putt, right? And that's not something that you can say on every golf course. That's even a possibility. So three-putt avoidance based on the large green complexes I saw, as well as fairways gained and or driving accuracy and or strokes gained off the tee. These things are things that I think will be very important this week, and it was evident in watching the 2015 match play final between McIlroy and Woodland. There are two par fives on this golf course. Number 10, depending on the wind, I'd imagine still would be reachable by most of the field, probably going to play around 560 yards. The fourth is a monster. It's probably going to be a three-shot hole. Again, depending on the wind, it's certainly going to play over 600 yards. Maybe if you catch it downwind, some folks will go for that green in two, but for the most part, the fourth will be a three-shot hole. There are four par threes. The one I want to talk about is the eighth hole, which plays at 250 yards. This thing's playing into the wind. We literally might have guys hitting three woods, and I don't know, some of these guys might have to hit a driver off this tee. It's going to play as an absolute monster. It will likely play well over par. So that's just going to be a fun hole to watch. No real actionability as far as adjusting the model goes with just the eighth hole. It is just one hole out of 18. If you make the cut, you'll play it 4 times out of 72 holes that you're going to play. So don't want to weight it in the model, but it's going to be a fun one to watch. That's for sure. One thing I will weight in the model, there will be 7 or 8, depending on where they set up the tees, par fours that'll play between 450 and 500 yards. So that's going to be a very, very important range. And we will include strokes gained on this par 4 range in our model this week because so many of the holes that will be played will be in this range. Other notable par 4s would be number 7 and number 16, which depending on where they set up the tees, and the wind, of course, again, will potentially be drivable for some of the folks in the field. And this is where maybe a guy like Bryson would have an advantage, although I don't think he finds enough fairways this week to be viable. 7 and 16 will probably play around anywhere from that 300 to 330 yard range. So we will see some folks going for the greens there. So going to be a really exciting golf tournament. 2 drivable par 4s, a par 3 that plays over 250 yards. We have a long par 5 and then another par 5 that's going to be a risk reward hole. And all the while, we're going to have winds that are going to be, gusting and certainly confusing the best players in the world. So I'm really, really excited for this week. It's going to be an awesome golf tournament, and the entertainment value is going to be off the charts. It's also a tournament where I could see one player really lapping the field if they're able to come in, clean as far as bogey avoidance goes. So I'm hoping that we get a jam-packed leaderboard where anything can happen come Sunday. And if that's the case, then this is going to be one hell of a golf tournament. The field's 156 players. We do have some club pros in here. So there's certainly some players in this field that we can eliminate immediately off the bat as far as Draftkings plays go. But it's a big field and it's a strong field. So we're going to see soft pricing again this week, which, as I've mentioned previously, typically leads to people going toward a balanced build. And it's pretty much no surprise to you guys, I'd imagine, that I do also like a balanced build this week on my initial look. There are a few players up top that I do like, but I don't necessarily enjoy dipping down into the $6,000 range as much as I have in maybe the past couple of weeks. So we'll see what happens there with roster construction. So the golfer prototype we're looking for and things we included in our model this week, a mainstay, strokes gained tee to green. I just want guys that are solid ball strikers first and foremost. So strokes gained tee to green, strokes gained approach are both making their way into the model again this week. I mentioned that finding fairways is going to be extremely important. So I've included fairways gained as well as strokes gained off the tee. I mentioned the large green complexes, so I've included 3-putt avoidance. I've also included bogey avoidance. I expect this tournament to be a difficult tournament relative to par. I don't expect these guys to be very far under par. So par will be a good score in my opinion this week. So bogey avoidance is something that I certainly wanted to include, as well as scrambling, which that's a player's ability to get up and down, and that's going to lend well to avoiding bogeys, right? And I think there are going to be quite a few greens missed this week because the fairways are going to be hard to find, and since the rough is so long, it's going to be hard to find the green from the rough. So if you're able to scramble around the greens, it is going to be crucial this week because par will be a good score. And par typically is a good score in the PGA Championship. A couple years back at Belle Reve, Brooks set the 72-hole record for the PGA Championship, absolutely set the course on fire. Last year, Brooks won the PGA Championship again at Bethpage Black. But this time it was at 8 under, so I expect that to be more so what we see as a winning score this week around Harding Park, if not even maybe a little worse, maybe more in that maybe 4 or 5 under range. But yeah, Brooks will be going for the three-peat this week in the PGA Championship, which is one hell of a storyline. And after his play last week, he certainly can't be ignored. So with that, let's light this back up and we will get into our top shelf plays for the 2020 PGA Championship. Okay. Top shelf plays for this week. And this field is so strong and so large and the pricing so soft that I could have recommended probably a couple dozen more players than I did, but I took the extra time this week to take the extra step and really weed out those fringe guys that I had. So I did focus on a fairly tight player pool for you guys, as tight as I could. I took 3 top shelf plays, so I really was able to narrow that down. We have 13 mid shelf plays, I believe, and we have 7 in the SCHWAG bag. So 23 players. I think I did a great job in narrowing down the player pool for you guys. But with that being said, even these guys, I will have some caveats for. There are slight concerns that I have. And I want you guys to go ahead and take that information and weigh it as you please, right? Like how I feel shouldn't be how you feel all the time. So if I say something that concerns me, but it doesn't concern you, then don't let it concern you. Go ahead and fire up that player. And the reason that I mention this is because off the rip for our top shelf plays, $10,000 or more in DraftKings salary, I'm starting with Justin Thomas, JT at $11,300, the most expensive player on the slate. It's projected at 17.6% ownership, which is healthy. But I think if JT didn't win last week, this ownership percentage would be even higher. Like if we saw the same statistics from JT last week, ball striking, but let's say Brooks were able to hang on down the stretch and take the win, I think JT's more in like that 25% owned range, and probably the highest owned player on the slate. He also would have been priced lower, which would have attributed to this, but I think what's scaring people off is the same thing that's scaring me off. At the $11,300 price tag, you really need JT's got to be top 5 certainly, and maybe he makes a lot of birdies and some eagles, so he comes in better than that in DraftKings scoring. But you really want him to win the event if you're paying $11,300 for JT, especially with all the talent coming in behind him at a significant savings. And players just on the PGA Tour don't win back-to-back weeks often at all. It is extremely rare for that to happen. Now, JT is a talent that can do it, certainly, and he rates out great. He's rating 3rd in our custom model. You know, he's the best player in this field, tee to green, 2nd best on approach, 7th in scrambling, 5th in bogey avoidance over the last 24 measured rounds. I think he's a great fit. It's just at this price tag, I really want him to win the event, and that just doesn't happen often on the PGA Tour that players win in back-to-back weeks. So JT's someone that I have really mixed feelings on this week. If you're someone that's like, screw that, like, I don't care if people don't normally win back-to-back weeks, like, he rates out well, he's been hitting the ball well, he's been, you know, he's a good fit, then absolutely fire up JT, because all the statistics are pointing to a good performance this week. It's just more on the narrative side of things, as well as the one statistic that I mentioned in that, and I don't have the exact number, but I know it is a low occurrence of players that win back-to-back weeks on the PGA Tour. That has me concerned. It does. And there are some other guys below JT that we can pivot to that I don't share those same concerns for. So I do really like Justin Thomas, even at the $11,300 price tag, because the pricing is so soft. We could even jump down after JT and go straight into the $7,000 range and still build, you know, a great lineup. But I need him to win at this price tag, and players don't win back-to-back weeks on the PGA Tour very often. So Justin Thomas, $11,300, the first top shelf play of the week, but buyer beware, as I mentioned. The next top shelf play of the week is Brooks Koepka, going for the three-peat. $10,700, 19.2% projected ownership. And I mean, it makes sense. Brooks is tailor-made for the PGA Championship, clearly. It's an event he likes. He likes all of the majors. He played well last week, as I mentioned. It was a narrative play on Brooks last week. Coming into the PGA Championship, you knew he had to start to show some form, and that's exactly what he did. Yeah, the wheels came off down the stretch, but I'm sure Brooks was plenty satisfied with his performance. And in his mind, he's thinking, okay, I'm geared up for the PGA Championship now. I'm right where I need to be. So the model's not going to like Brooks, just like it didn't last week, because his game hasn't been great aside from last week. But it looks like he's turned the corner. I shouldn't have to tell you that Brooks Koepka is a guy you probably don't want to fade in major championships. The ownership projection is up there. It's healthy. So we'll want to monitor that. And as a matter of fact, it's actually moved since I last looked. It's all the way up at 21.8% now. Yeah, I can't fade Brooks in this spot, but I can't also say that I'm super excited to get overweight to him at that ownership projection. It's not like he's necessarily been a world beater as of late, but Brooks in a major championship, you got to own some of them. You just do. So Brooks Koepka, $10,700, 21.8% projected ownership is the next top shelf play. And our last top shelf play is the best player in the world, number 1 ranked in the official world golf rankings, Jon Rahm at $10,500, coming in at 10.7% projected ownership. And as I mentioned, Rahm's, first of all, the number 1 player in the world. So that's almost justification enough already as to why you should play Rahm. But our custom model also loves Rahm. He's coming in 5th. He's 7th in this field, tee to green, 5th off the tee, 10th in bogey avoidance, 32nd in fairways gained, which even with his length to still be 32nd in fairways gained in this field is awesome. It's amazing. Rahm's underpriced here. He is. He's underpriced and he's underowned. I'll be overweight to the field. I love Jon Rahm this week. He's a guy that has a great short game. So even if he does miss the green, I trust that he'll be able to scramble. And as a matter of fact, he's 22nd in scrambling over the last 24 measured rounds in this field. I love Rahm. It's another reason why it'll be tough for me to go to JT. It's because I love Rahm so much. I'll match the field on Brooks, and then I'll just take all of my other shares of these top shelf plays, and I'll likely allocate them to Rahm, maybe a sprinkle or two of JT. But I absolutely love Jon Rahm this week. Let's go ahead and grab the world's number 1 at 10.5% projected ownership and at a pricing discount I'm all for it. So last top shelf play is John Rahm at $10,500. And this weed burns so slow. I'm burning like molasses. It's like I got honey in my joint or something. Looks like it's running a bit. There we go. Okay. Before I get into my mid-shelf plays, as a matter of fact, let me run you guys through an ownership exercise. And I'm actually thinking about also dropping an article, like an ownership fade article. Just a piece of strategy that I'm going to be going with this week. And it's risky, certainly, but man, with the way this course is looking to set up and these ownership projections that I'm seeing, I'm really liking just taking some ownership fades. Some players that rate out well, but that are just too high owned based on the fact that I think, there are going to be huge scores awaiting these guys if they just hit, a couple of poor shots. And to have guys well over 20% projected ownership when there are great pivots in their range that are a third as owned, I really do struggle with it. So the guys I'm talking about, and we'll actually get to Morikawa later because I did include him as one of these plays that I like. But Morikawa is the highest owned projected player at 23.4%. Then it's Xander Schauffele at 22.6%, followed by Koepka at 21.8% and Cantlay at 20%. I like them all as plays, right? I just spoke about Koepka. I'll speak on Morikawa here a bit later. Schauffele rates out well. We went to him last week. He played well last week. He's a guy that if he can put 4 rounds together, certainly will be in contention. Cantlay is just week in and week out one of the world's best ball strikers. So I get it, right? Like I get why these guys are rating out so well, but man, the other guys around them, some of these guys I'm going to be mentioning that are at lower ownerships. So when you hear me mention these ownerships, just understand that if I mention a 10% owned player in Morikawa's range, they're less than half as owned, which you really need to take into consideration. So Koepka's the one player I did mention. I'm not going to fade Koepka in this major championship, in the PGA Championship, especially what he showed last week. I'm not going to fade him, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to get overweight to him. And these other 3 guys in Morikawa, Schauffele, and Cantlay, if their ownership keeps ticking up, I will just full fade based on the fact that this is going to be a really tough golf course this week. And making the cut is no assurance. There is a really strong field on a really tough golf course. So these ownerships are feeling a little high to me and a bit in the scary range. So that's just the mindset I'm coming in when I go ahead and recommend the plays to you that I am. So I do need to mention that, Schauffele does rate out great. Cantlay rates out great. DJ, Dustin Johnson, rates out decently. But they're just too high owned. DJ at 17% projected ownership. They're too high owned on a golf course this difficult. And particularly DJ, hasn't been playing that well as of late anyway, relative to his rankings. So ownership fades are something you can look to this week, guys. Don't buy into the fact that just because the guy's rating out well in the model, he deserves his ownership. There's an ownership at which we can fade anyone, even the top players in our model. So just be aware of that. And now, after that spiel, I can get into the mid-tier plays. So our mid-shelf plays, that is $7,500 or more in DraftKings salary. Our first mid-shelf play deserves a little toke before. He's the GOAT. He's behind us. Ash to my lap. Shit. It's Tiger Woods. $9,200. And Tiger per fantasynational.com is coming in at 6.8% projected ownership. I expect it comes in higher than that. He's gonna get into double digits. I mean, he's Tiger Woods. Everyone loves playing him. But even at 10%, I'm totally cool with paying that for Tiger. Look, guys, I get that there are like injury concerns floating around for Tiger right now. There's some sort of rumors going around the rumor mill. I think if Tiger Woods weren't ready to compete, he wouldn't play. That's just how I feel. Major championship or not, Tiger Woods only will show up if he's ready to compete, particularly at this stage of his career. So if Tiger's in the field, I have to assume that he's here for a reason. I mean, he made the cut at Memorial. It wasn't a great performance by any means, but he still was able to make the cut at a very difficult golf tournament. So Tiger has had success at this golf course in the limited times we've seen it. Again, I mentioned he won that WGC event back in 2005. At the President's Cup, he was actually the leading scorer for the entire cup in a President's Cup that the USA won. So, yeah, I'm totally cool with Tiger. And if we can get him to actually come in at this 6.8% projected ownership, I mean, yeah, Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods at $9,200. I shouldn't have to say anything else. He's Tiger Woods. And I really hope we see him in contention this week. So I like Tiger at 6.8% projected ownership. The next player I like rates out tops in our model. He is, he has quite a bit of ownership, but man, does he seriously crush our model this week. It's Daniel Berger at $8,800. And he's coming in at 16.9% projected ownership, which I don't love. Clearly, everyone's, on the same page here, that Berger's rating out as a stud. But he rates out first in the custom model, 8th tee to green, 1st in scrambling, 3rd in bogey avoidance, 12th in fairways gained over the last 24 measured rounds in this field. Man, Berger just does everything you want to see for this event. He finds fairways, and if he doesn't find the fairway, then he's the best scrambler in this field anyway. Yeah, even at 16.9% projected ownership, we like Berger enough this week at the HTG pod that we will be well overweight to the field. He's my pick to win the event. I think Daniel Berger will be in contention on Sunday this week. He's been in great form. Really no question marks as of this point. So he's too cheap at $8,800. The ownership is where it should be at 16.9%, but we'll still get overweight this week to Berger and be happy in doing it. The next player, and I already mentioned him, is Collin Morikawa at $8,600, 23.4% projected ownership. And Morikawa is honestly just pretty similar to Berger. He does pretty much everything you want to see around here. He rates out great in our model. Coming in 6th. He's also 6th tee to green, 5th on approach, 5th in fairways gained, 17th in bogey avoidance over the last 24 measured rounds. He's 99th in scrambling, though. And at this projected ownership, even having one strike against you is enough for me to start to consider the fade. So on Morikawa right now, if his ownership doesn't start to drop, I'll be fading. He's a guy who, if he isn't performing to snuff tee to green, he clearly can't trust his scrambling to save him. And that's concerning enough at this projected ownership that I'll be fading. Again, as I mentioned, do think for yourself. Don't just take what I say and then take it as gospel or anything like that. If you think that the numbers that I just gave you outside of the scrambling are good enough for Morikawa to warrant this 23.4% ownership, then play him, because the model does like him, and he is a great fit around this course. I expect him to play well this week. But at this ownership, the outcome of him missing a few greens more than usual, him taking maybe a big number on just one or two of these holes, him not being able to save himself around the green, there's enough of a probability for that to happen, in my opinion, and good enough pivots around him that are half his own, that I will at this point in time be fading Morikawa at $8,600 and 23.4% projected ownership. The next mid-shelf play is a guy who I'll be pivoting some of Morikawa's ownership to, and a guy who we liked last week, and I don't know, it's a little weird for him. It's Victor Hovland, Big Dick Vic, at $8,500, 10.7% projected ownership, and I don't know. It was just an uncharacteristically bad week striking the ball for Hovland last week, and I'm willing to give him a pass. He's still second tee to green in this field over the last 24 measured rounds. 10.7% projected ownership is certainly fair. The $8,500 price tag is certainly fair. Probably both are too low, quite honestly, for one of the best ball strikers since the tour restart. So I'll go back to Hovland this week. He has the same question mark Morikawa does, in that he really needs to get better at scrambling. He is not good around the green, and it's really the last piece that he needs to add to his game. If he can become, above tour average in that aspect of his game, he's going to be really dangerous for years to come. And I think he will figure it out eventually, but we get him at under half the ownership of Morikawa is the difference. He's $100 cheaper and he's under half his owned. So I think they're really similar plays this week, but we get Hovland at the ownership and price discount. So really like Victor Hovland at $8,500 and 10.7% projected ownership this week. Making a reappearance on the podcast, first time in a bit, is our good friend Jason Day at $8,400, 13.8% projected ownership. And Day is statistically rating out decently, but more of a narrative play for me, in that as I build this tournament out in my head, I mentioned par is going to be a good score. And in a golf tournament like that, I want me some Jason Day. Jason Day, one of the best players around the green in the world. His putter has really turned around and been a positive asset to him lately. And when his putter's a good asset to him, it is seriously dangerous. He rates 23rd overall in the custom model. 17th in scrambling. As I mentioned, he's a great scrambler. 21st in bogey avoidance. The big knock against Day this week is going to be he does not find many fairways. He's 101st in this field in fairways gained, and that is scary. It really is. But to be able to lean on the scrambling to get himself out of some difficult situations potentially, that's enough for me. He also rates 37th in the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards. So these longer par 4s, he's clearly better than most of the guys in the field. So he's been in great form. The price tag's fair. The ownership is fair. So I like Jason Day this week. I like Jason Day at that $8,400 price tag and at 13.8% projected ownership. The next player I like, and it's really more so an ownership play, is Ricky Fowler at $8,300, 8.3% projected ownership. And Fowler played pretty well last week. He rates 20th in the custom model. He's 6th on that par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, which is one of the reasons why I really do like him this week. And also, we can trust that if Fowler's putter is where it normally is, especially on these bent greens, he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to scramble because of his putter. He's 39th in scrambling in this field, which isn't too shabby. 21st off the tee, 48th in fairways gained. So he's okay in all those areas. But if he gets a hot putter, he's going to be able to avoid bogeys. So really like Fowler due to his putter this week, as well as how well he's played the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards. And because of his ownership, which is sitting all the way down at 8.3% on the projection, that's too low. So Ricky Fowler, $8,300, 8.3% projected ownership, is a good mid-swag target, or mid-shelf target. I'm sorry. We'll get to the swag bag later. He's a good mid-shelf target. So is the next guy, Matthew Fitzpatrick, $8,100, 11% projected ownership. And Fitzpatrick is a guy that just finds a ton of fairways. And we're going to want that around this track this week, I think. He rates 6th in fairways gained over the last 24 measured rounds against this field, 2nd in bogey avoidance, 4th in scrambling, 12th in 3-putt avoidance, 14th in the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards. So yeah, really, really like Fitzpatrick. He's coming in 8th overall in the custom model. He's a guy that in a golf tournament where par's a good score, Matthew Fitzpatrick's going to be in contention. So Fitzpatrick is someone I will be heavily overweight to the field on due to how well he rates out, as I mentioned. and he's been playing decent golf lately. So Fitzpatrick, $8,100, 11% projected ownership. A guy I think you should certainly look to if you're down here in the bottom $8,000 range. The next guy, and I don't like him as much as Fitzpatrick, although he has more upside than Fitzpatrick, so that's interesting. It's Patrick Reed at $8,000, 9.6% projected ownership. And Reed's just a guy I feel like you should sprinkle in if you can. He's a winner. And if you don't have him, you're always liable to him, winning this golf tournament and leaving you hanging out to dry, because the upside with Patrick Reed is always a win. And it really doesn't matter what golf course. Like, this is a terrible fit for him. He's 134th in this field in fairways gained over the last 24 measured rounds, 92nd in scrambling, 94th on approach. Like, it's ugly stuff. He rates 71st in the custom model. But Reed's kind of a guy that, like, I don't give a shit about that stuff about. Like, he'll just randomly show up and, like, win and be like, yeah, that's what's up. So if you can get to him, I think you can. I think you do, if you can get a piece of him. I do like Fitzpatrick more, but as I mentioned, Reed has more upside than Fitzpatrick does. Reed could go out there and win this damn thing. And in a golf tournament where par's a good score, Reed's another guy who can come in with just a hot putter and scramble through his putter. So Reed's a guy I think you at least have to give consideration to, even though he doesn't rate out well. So that's why I wanted to mention him at $8,000 and 9.6% projected ownership. The next player, and we have not seen him yet since the restart, it's Adam Scott at $7,800, 11% projected ownership. And Scott's just a world-class player to be priced all the way down at $7,800. He rates 35th in our custom model, 19th tee to green, 36th in scrambling, 11th in bogey avoidance. So love to see all of that. But he is 103rd in fairways gained. And we haven't seen him in a while, right? So it's really a pedigree play. Scott's such a world-class player that, at $7,800, getting to some of him is not that difficult, and something that I think you should do. He's barely cracking the double digits here in ownership. So getting double-digit ownership on Adam Scott, or at least getting some ownership to this next player, makes a lot of sense to me. And the next player I was referring to is Justin Rose at $7,800, 6.3% projected ownership. And that ownership projection is crazy to me. 6.3% on a world-class player like Rose. Like, look, I get it. He's been absolutely awful lately. But, he took last week off to clearly work on the game. And hopefully he's figured something out, because if he returns to, even median Justin Rose, then we're getting a serious bargain here. He rates 92nd in the custom model, so obviously I get why people are off of him. He's been three-putting quite a bit lately, 100th in three-putt avoidance over the last 24 measured rounds against this field, 105th in bogey avoidance. So, yeah, I get why people are not playing him, but it's swung too far. This ownership is too low. I will be overweight to the field on Justin Rose and hope that he, finds something over the week and returns to, at least his median form. And then we're going to be happy with the result we get out of Rose this week. The next player that I like in the mid-tier is Abraham Answer at $7,700, 14.6% projected ownership. And I don't like Answer as much because of the low ownership for the players around him in his pricing range. But the model loves Answer. He rates 9th in the custom model. He's 8th in fairways gained, which you love to see. 15th in strokes gained off the tee. 14th in bogey avoidance. 7th in three-putt avoidance. 16th overall tee to green. He does struggle in the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards. He's 94th against this field. So I think that's enough of a strike against him that I can justify pivoting to, a guy like Justin Rose for $100 more, who has 1/3 of the ownership, or even maybe a guy like this next guy I'm going to mention, Sung Jae Im at $7,600. who's coming in at 3.4% projected ownership. I can pivot to those guys over an Answer, which is why it's a little difficult for me to get even weight to the field on Answer. But if you're just playing a few lineups, certainly fire up Answer because the model loves him this week. Maybe not a big event player would be the knock you could give to Answer as well, but I'm not too concerned about that. That's something that folks tend to figure out throughout their career as they gain experience in big events. So Answer at $7,700 and 14.6% projected ownership, I do like this week. And I already mentioned him, but Sung J M at $7,600, pure ownership play, 3.4% projected ownership. Like Sung Jae's been awful tee to green lately, but Sung Jae's a grinder, and I'm sure he's been hitting plenty of balls over the last few days, over the last couple of weeks, trying to figure it out. So one of these events, Sung Jae's going to figure it out. And as I've mentioned to you guys, I would rather be too early than too late. So 3.4% projected ownership and a $7,600 price tag sure seems like a good time to strike on a talent like Sung Jae. So Sung Jae M, $7,600, 3.4% projected ownership. He doesn't rate out well in the model. 82nd, 128th on the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards. 124th on approach. So yeah, it's been bad, but at least he's been scrambling well. 29th in this field. He's hitting fairways. He's 39th in this field in that respect. 35th off the tee. So there's enough good that I can get behind this at such an abysmal ownership projection. I mean, that's just wrong. So Sung J M, $7,600, 3.4% projected ownership. I'll be well overweight to the field on this week. And the last mid-shelf player, he's just barely cleared his way over the SCHWAG bag this week. It is Sugar Shane Lowry at $7,500. 10.2% projected ownership. I don't love, especially when we get Sung Jae at 3.4% for $100 more. But yeah, Lowry continued the great ball striking last week. Little concerned with his performance off the tee on Sunday. It was piss poor. So hopefully that doesn't carry over into this event, and that would be the one knock that I would give to Lowry coming into this event. But other than that, it all looks good. Again, a top 25 player in the world. The $7,500 price tag is probably too low. Lowry carries immense upside, the upside to win this event. And in an event that I think par is going to be a good score, it only bolsters the case for Lowry this week. So Shane Lowry, $7,500, 10.2% projected ownership. I'm going to be even weight to the field on him this week. And let's respark before we get into the SCHWAG bag. I think my mom's calling me, guys. I will have to call her back, obviously. As a matter of fact, let me just shoot her a text so she knows that we're mid-podcast. Hopefully she gets to listen to this. Okay. Into the SCHWAG bag. So players under $7,500 in Draftkings pricing. First SCHWAG bag play we like, and man, the model loves him for this price tag. It is Chez Reavie at 12.6% projected ownership. Chez is rating second in the custom model this week. He's 17th tee to green, 10th on the par 4s, 450 to 500 yards, 15th in 3-putt avoidance, 18th on approach, 8th in scrambling, 9th in fairways gained, 85th off the tee, so he doesn't hit it very far, but 8th in bogey avoidance. So he is literally doing everything we want him to do. If the wind makes this golf course play exceptionally long, then Chez would be in trouble. So that would be the concern. Chez is in a bit of trouble if that's the case. But aside from that, I see no reason why we don't go to Reavie this week. I'll at least be even weight to the field. 12.6% projected ownership seems fair to me. So yeah, Chez Reavie, $7,400, 12.6% projected ownership. Really like him this week. The model really likes him this week as well. So we will be at least even weight, but likely well overweight to the field on Reavie, given that, we can quell any concerns about the golf course playing too long for his game. The next swag bag play is Billy Horschel, old Billy Ho, at $7,400, 7.5% projected ownership. Horschel was like one of the last fringe players to make the cut as far as players I was gonna tout this week is concerned goes. So I'm not in love with him. With that being said, but he does rate out 22nd in the custom model. Some highlights there: 18th in three-putt avoidance, 29th on the par fours, 450 to 500 yards. He's 24th off the tee and 38th in fairways gained. So does everything pretty well. He's been pretty awful on approach lately, 93rd over the last 24 measured rounds against this field. But, Horschel is a big event player. He can contend for FedEx Cups, as we've seen. So I do like Billy Horschel's upside in this event enough that I will be able to likely get even weight to the field because his ownership projection is only coming in at 7.5%. So Horschel's a guy that I'm a little lukewarm on, but at that ownership projection, I would like to be even weight to the field on Horschel at $7,400. The next player I like, and I'm surprised he's not owned a bit more, is Henrik Stenson at $7,300, 8.3% projected ownership. And Stenson is too cheap based on the class of player he is. You realize that's a theme with me. If you're, a world-class player and you've proven that over the course of your career, and I have no reason to think that your current form should be, abysmal, then I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So Stenson's one of those guys. $7,300 is too cheap. 8.3% projected ownership. I was surprised it was this low given the price tag. Stenson's rating out 31st in the custom model. 52nd tee to green, 9th on approach, 27th in fairways gained, 24th in scrambling, 13th in bogey avoidance, 127th in strokes gained off the tee. So that's the concern with Stenson. And if the golf course is playing long, you might not be able to hit that awesome fairway finder 3-wood he loves, and may have to resort to the driver. So that is the concern with Stenson. Either that or he'll be playing some long irons into these long par 4 ranges. And he does rate 110th in this field in the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards. So that's the concern for Stenson. If he's able to hit that 3-wood off the tee, then we love him this week. If the course is playing too long to do that, and he has to resort to a driver, then Stenson might be in trouble. And that's really going to be up to the winds, as well as how well he's able to hit his long irons. But it seems over the last 24 measured rounds, he hasn't been able to hit them well enough in that 450 to 500 yard par 4 range to pay off. So Stenson, as far as his class of player, I really like him. There is a red flag there, but at $7,300 and the ownership projection of 8.3%, I'll definitely be even weight to the field, at least on Stenson. The next player I like and the model is obsessed with is Harris English at $7,100, 11.7% projected ownership. So other people's Harris English is popping in more models than just mine for sure if he's getting into double-digit ownership in this pricing range. But English is rating out 4th in the custom model, 24th tee to green, 2nd in 3-putt avoidance, 2nd in scrambling, 6th in bogey avoidance, 29th in fairways gained over the last 24 measured rounds against this field. He's killing it. So this price tag's too cheap for a guy that's putting up these numbers in the model. The ownership projection is, again, it's maybe a little higher than I was suspecting, but he's popping in other people's models as well, which shows us that we're hopefully doing something right with our model. So even at 11.7% ownership, if I end up in this pricing range, I will prefer English to just about everybody else. So Harris English, $7,100, 11.7% projected ownership, is a great swag bag play this week. The next swag bag play is also a great play. It's Kevin Na at $7,000, 5% projected ownership. And the upside for Na is just so great at that ownership projection. He's a guy that can win events. An event like this may be a stretch, but I mean, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if Kevin Na hoisted the Wanamaker at the end of this week. So, yeah, Kevin Na, he's a guy that just carries a lot of upside. It's almost like in a similar mold to what I said about Patrick Reed. Even if he doesn't rate out extremely well, I can throw that out the window for Kevin Na because he's a guy that just out of nowhere can win an event. He carries that upside with him week in and week out. As far as the statistics go, let's see here. Na is 17th in our custom model, so pretty good there. 42nd tee to green, 12th in scrambling, 10th in fairways gained, 39th in bogey avoidance, but 106th off the tee. So another player who, if the wind makes this golf course play very long, like Chez Reavie, could be in trouble. But if not, we really like him this week. So maybe you correlate those Na and Reavie lineups. I like that a lot, as a matter of fact. If you're going to play Reavie, you should play Na with him because in a tournament that Chez Reavie is succeeding in, Kevin Na will also be succeeding in. So I really like that correlation between Reavie and Na. Go ahead and play both of them together. If you're going to play them in lineups, play them both together because it's going to be dependent on how long the golf course is playing with the winds. That's going to determine their success this week. So really like playing a correlation play there between those two players. The next swag bag play, and he also was a fringe player. He barely made the touts this week, but it's Dylan Fratelli at $6,800, 2.6% projected ownership. And Fratelli, I mean, he rates out well in the model. He is coming in at 28th in the custom model, 35th tee to green, 20th on that par 4 range, 450 to 500 yards, 21st in scrambling. So love to see that he can scramble. But he's 96th in 3-putt avoidance. So we're going to need Fratelli to avoid the 3-putts on these greens. And coming in 85th on approach, he clearly hasn't been hitting it with a close proximity to the hole. So it's a little scary that he may, leave himself with these long putts and he's bad at avoiding 3-putts. But if he's able to find some 2-putts from some long ranges or hit the ball better on approach and be a little closer to the hole, then yeah, Fratelli at $6,800 is live. Usually I like him more in a tournament where birdies are abound, but he does seem to fit this golf course pretty well as far as how we built our model goes. So I had to mention Fratelli. I'm not in love with him, but if what I just mentioned for you is enough for you to go to him, then I recommend you at least take a deeper look and see if Fratelli is the guy you like this week if you end up in this pricing range at $6,800. And the 2.6% projected ownership, of course, no issues there. It's low enough that we can go to him for sure. And the last play of the week, the last swag bag play, and I really do like him this week. Maybe doesn't have a ton of upside, but man, he's going to be a good play this week, I think. It's Bud Cauley at $6,400. And what I love about Bud is his ownership projection is 0.7%. Yeah, sign me up. $6,400, fair price tag for Bud in a field this strong, but he's rating 14th in our custom model. He's 43rd tee to green, which isn't great, but at this price tag is great. 22nd on the par 4 ranges, 450 to 500 yards, 6th in 3-putt avoidance, 10th scrambling. He is only 82nd off the tee and 58th in fairways gained. So we're going to need Bud Cauley to have a good week off the tee. It is what it is. But he has gained in his last 3 rounds off the tee, all of those at Memorial. So we know that was a difficult golf tournament, especially to gain off the tee. So clearly the off the tee form is good. And if we can get a good driving week from him, we know that he can scramble around these greens and he will make, if par is a good score, he will make a good play. So $6,400, Bud Cauley, 0.7% projected ownership. Sheesh. Yo, guys. Big week this week. I'm going to drop a couple articles today try and help you guys as much as I can. We're gonna get a big win. I know we're building to it. Thank you guys that are keep hitting me up, let me know how you guys are doing. That is awesome to see. I fucking love it. Literally, I live for it. It's amazing. Fires me up. So please keep doing that. Yeah, make sure you check out those folks at Thrive Fantasy. They really have a great product. Would love to see it grow. Would love to see the prize pools grow. So please do check it out. And if you do, use promo code HTGPod. You'll get $20 match on your first deposit of $20 or more. And yeah, let's have a big fucking week, guys. It's gonna be a big week. Let's have a big week this week. We need one. What better week than a PGA Championship week? Low-owned Tiger Woods. Let's hope the GOAT comes to play. Love you guys that are all watching this. Please, if you can comment, let me know how I can do better. Like the videos. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Also download the podcast on Apple Music, on Spotify. I greatly appreciate all of those things. Like and rate everything you can. It helps me so much. Really appreciate you guys. We're going to have a big week soon. I promise. I hope it's this week. Let's get it, folks. Peace.